Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bronson's Soapbox. And today I want to talk about two games that are going to be coming out in Japan, at least in September, and how they're handling the way they do things in two very different ways, and how this is a parable for the game industry as a whole. One of them is Final Fantasy 15, and one of them is Persona 5. And I'll start with the way Final Fantasy did things and why and how it's how the majority of the game industry is doing things and why I think it's bad for the industry. Final Fantasy 15 has been in development for 10 years in some way, shape, or form. It started as Final Fantasy 13 Versus, and it was on the PS3, and it has moved to the PS4, and it was announced as Final Fantasy 15, and they've had demos, and the way they announced the release date is they had this big, event that they streamed and people could go to in San Francisco, and it was hosted by the Kind of Funny guys, and it was this huge, big deal where they announced it's going to have a movie, and it's going to have a clothing line, and it's going to be, all this crap, and it has a $270 collector's edition, and there's a demo you can download tonight, and all this stuff along with it, and other news has trickled out over the following weeks, where it's like, yeah, if this doesn't sell, 10 million plus copies, it's probably going to spell the end for Final Fantasy, and the only Final Fantasy that's ever done that is Final Fantasy VII, and that's over the course of like 20 years across multiple platforms. And just all this, and how it's using this high-end, really expensive custom graphics engine. And, don't get me wrong, I played the demo, and it seemed fine. It seemed fun for what little there was. It sadly reminded me of Final Fantasy 13, where it's like, walk down a hallway, fight a little bit. Walk down a hallway, see a story bit. But also, the demo it kind of felt like a tech demo. Like, here's the weather stuff, here's all the stuff we can do with the way this looks. And this is ridiculous to me. The fact that this game has been in development for, like I said, 10 years is when they announced it, so it could have been in development before they announced it. Long before. And the fact that it could be the end of Final Fantasy because it needs to sell 10 million copies, which a Final Fantasy game hasn't done in forever. And it's just this all or nothing approach that makes no fucking sense, but god damn it, they're going to do it anyway. And, it's developed by the team who's been fucking up Final Fantasy since Final Fantasy X. Like, Final Fantasy X was what the last, universally beloved Final Fantasy, where the majority of the fans of the series said, yeah, this is good. And that came out in 2001. And the last great spin-off was Crisis Core, which came out in 2007, so that was almost a decade ago. So they're banking this beloved franchise and all this money on the guys who made Final Fantasy 13. And its spin-offs, which 13 did pretty well in sales. Its spin-offs did awful. I don't even think the spin-offs barely broke 1 million combined between them. And this is kind of what the gaming industry as a whole is doing in a lot of ways. Like, this new Battlefield needs to do Call of Duty, top sales numbers, or else, we're gonna go, bankrupt, or we're not gonna make another one of these. And like you look over at Tomb Raider, Tomb Raider, the reboot when it came out, and just like, 3 million copies was enough. 3 million copies in the course of for a reboot on 3 systems that ended up being a very critically acclaimed game and go on to sell 6 million copies. They'd actually be very happy with it, and wanted to do a sequel. But the fact that a game can sell 3 million copies and still be labeled as a, quote, failure or not good enough is ridiculous. Like, you gotta think, okay, so an average video game is $60. Now, the publisher gets to keep about $40-ish of that after the shipping and the retailer takes their cut. So, $40 times $3 million. Okay, let's see what that is, shall we? That is $120 million. So you're telling me that game needed to make more than $120 million is ridiculous. And especially when you look at a game that also came out around, a little earlier than that, known as Catherine. Also, funnily enough, developed by the Persona guys and published by Atlas, which they were happy when they broke 600,000 in the same amount of time. They were stoked, and that game was also looked very good, had great production values, a really good story, and reviewed well, and they were stoked for 600,000 copies. And why? Because they developed the game with a budget and set expectations accordingly, and put it in the hands of a really talented development team. Very similar to what it looks like they're doing with Persona 5. Persona 5, they announced it on an online internet stream, and then they've just done 2 trailers since, with a little bit of information with each. And their most recent one, which announced the Japanese release date in September, said didn't do an outlandish, didn't say we're gonna have a fucking movie or a clothing line or this or that. They said it's coming out September 15th in Japan. It's gonna have one collector's edition that's $130, and there will be an anime just like 3 and 4. So, and that game is also coming out on PS3, and it's using an updated version of the Catherine engine, so it wasn't super expensive to produce. And this is just Atlas as a whole. They say, all right, we're gonna make this game. It's gonna be on this budget, and we're gonna use existing tech, and it's gonna look good because of good art design. Not so much we're pushing technical boundaries, and we're gonna design a really fun game, and we're gonna keep our sales expectations in line. And I feel that they do have to develop games this way, partially just because no way a Persona game is going to go over 2 million. It just won't happen. Or if it does, I think 5 has the potential to do that, but I just don't think it's as likely for the franchise as a whole. But the franchise keeps getting good word of mouth, and it's just been a real snowball effect. I think 5 has a very good chance of being that breakout game, the way Dark Souls 1 was it for, the From Software series, and Dark Souls 3 turned into, like, the mega hit. Like, Persona 4 got the ball rolling like Dark Souls 1 did, and then Persona 5, could be the Dark Souls 3, like, the mega popular, like, best-selling one for the franchise that really gets it in the public eye. But, like, you look at what they're doing, and the way, like, they set that budget. They said we're gonna make a fun game. We're not gonna try and push crazy boundaries, and it's gonna be fine. Yeah, or not gonna be fine, but it's gonna be great, and we're gonna sell enough copies, and then we'll localize it for the U.S. and they'll buy it. Of course, there are the unicorn developers like Rockstar and Naughty Dog who can spend asinine amounts of money and then get it back by making the most ridiculous game ever. But there's a reason GTA 5 and Uncharted 4 and games of their ilk come out like maybe once every 2 years, because the type of teams that make those kind of experiences, there aren't many of them. So yeah, that's my thing for the week. I do think these 2 games are going to be great. Actually, I just have a lot more faith in Persona 5 and the way it's gone about things versus Final Fantasy 15. I will be back next week with something. I'm actually kind of hyped for the Warcraft movie, so it'll probably be something Warcraft related. Anyway, please follow us on Twitter @TheGamerAccess, twitch.tv/TheGamerAccess. Scroll down, there's a donation button. All donations go to things like microphones, capture equipment, keeping the Gamefly count up so we can do 60-minute access every week, getting us out to E3, funding for the hotels, stuff like that. So yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye.